Live programming for WAUK Radio 540 AM and 101 FM is produced right in the Shaw in beautiful downtown Waukesha, Wisconsin.
WAUK 540 AM, Brookfield's choice for news talk radio. Streaming 24/7 at WAUKradio.com.
Cheese curds tossed in seasoning on a bed of Kringle-cut fries with a demi-glaze and cheese sauce drizzle topped with herbs and more cheese.
By the way, Darren Breeden in 2018 set the world record eating 5 pounds, 2 ounces of cheese curds in 6 minutes.
Man, that sounds kind of tasty.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time, this is Kristin Brey with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin!
Welcome to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. It is Guam Liberation Day. It is National Junk Food Day. It is moving day for me, so I had very limited options of what I wanted to wear today. Jane, how are you doing this morning?
I am so excited.
Are you?
It's like movie premiere night. Are there any watch parties for the January 6th committee hearing tonight?
I know.
There should be.
I'm sure some people are having it. I mean, we've talked about bingo for the debate. You think there's going to be any bingo for tonight?
Oh, I think so. I think.
Or any drinking games?
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be, I don't know, scintillating.
Well, Jane's excited about the January 6th hearings. I'm excited because my guest today is my dear friend. He is also the executive director of Greater Holy Temple Christian Academy. He is also an entrepreneur and a business owner. He's a very active motivational speaker. Edward DeShazer. DeShazer. We talked about this right before we went on. Edward DeShazer. I still can't say it. Do you say it?
DeShazer.
DeShazer.
It is French.
Oh.
And I don't know what it's French
DeShazer.
for. I wish I had like a cool word. I was like, it's French for, I don't know.
DeShazer. There, I got it. All right. Eddie, Edward, preference?
Whichever one you want to call me.
I know. I feel like I've heard everyone call you different. Yes, exactly. Well, happy Guam Liberation Day. Did you know that it was Guam Liberation Day?
I did not know it was Guam Liberation Day.
I did not know either until I got invited to go to a party this afternoon, like a backyard Guam Liberation Party. I'm pretty sure the host is not from Guam, so I don't know if this is a tongue-in-cheek party, but I'm sure I'll find out. But I looked it up, and it's a day to commemorate the island's liberation from the Japanese during World War II, and kind of a good segue because speaking of Japanese during World War II, there is some issues with that in Muskego that we talked a little bit about last week. But this week there was a teach-in/rally because the situation has been that the Muskego School Board rejected a novel about Japanese internment camps in America during World War II. The book was called When the Emperor Was Divine, and they were handing out copies of the book. And this is kind of tied into larger conversations about school boards' decisions of what can or should be taught. And on top of that, there is, I feel like, multiple stories on pronouns and transgender issues. And so since you are a lifelong educator, I thought we could just start with what's it like to work in education right now? Is it stressful?
It's the last 2 years have been pretty challenging for many reasons. Our community comes from the city of Milwaukee for our school, so the challenges that Muskego may have, that the Mequons may have, a lot of these other districts have are challenges that are more unique to those districts versus ours. But with my work with the Closing the Achievement Gap Consortium, these are things that our group has spoken about with districts, and we've addressed at meetings, and these are things that we've talked about because they affect kids across the state of Wisconsin. So it's been a challenge for many reasons. You're almost throwing more challenges in on what is already one of the toughest jobs that there is.
Yeah, and as someone who has not worked in education but has sympathy and empathy for how hard teaching is, even in districts where there's not huge challenges with issues at home and poverty and transportation, just dealing with middle schoolers' attitudes in general, I think, is a tough ask. And didn't you start as a 7th grade teacher?
Yeah, my first year as a 7th grade teacher, and I loved it. It was
Yeah?
the best. I think like I struggle with the little kids because they wipe their nose, they grab your hands, and like that's just a struggle for me. And I love 7th graders because you can still reason with them, but they're not high school to where they just think they know more than you yet. So it's like that sweet spot where they're old enough to like have a real conversation with, but they're still young enough to think that you're like somewhat superhuman.
Like you're the boss.
Yeah.
How many 7th graders did you have to tell, like pull aside and be like, buddy, you got to start wearing deodorant?
Those classes after gym were always rough, 'cause especially at 7th, like kids aren't showering, and then you're just walking in. And at the time when I taught 7th grade, our school didn't have air conditioning, so it's like
gosh.
now you're just bringing sweaty kids into a sauna, and now we got to sit and teach, and all you could smell was just funk for the next class period.
So, I mean, I guess that's probably good to talk more about, like you already addressed that your school, Greater Holy Temple Christian Academy, has a different set of, you're not getting confronted with some of these, for lack of a better term, like culture war, talking political points that I think we've seen in so many other school districts over the last couple of years. Do you have colleagues, peers, mutuals that you have been struggling with it, and what have they said it's like to try to navigate this while still running a school and trying to do right by kids?
Yeah, no, other colleagues that I've worked with, one of the biggest struggles that they've had is the request for open records. Like one of the superintendents I know, he said, my assistant, who used to really help me do a lot of day-to-day activities, now she spends her entire day responding to open records requests for whatever amount of records that parents were looking for. So there's been a lot of struggles with that. And then it's like you always have to make sure your teachers are doing everything that's by the book, because the moment something isn't what a parent wants to see, they become loud. And then they're at these meetings. And, as we've seen, you have parents that are hijacking school board meetings.
Yeah.
Which what ends up happening, you end up losing school board members because the amount of work, it's already a lot of work to be on a school board. You're making big decisions that are very important for our kids' future. But when it starts to become a headache where people are coming in, they're calling you names, they're at your house, they're doing, those things, people start to question if it's worth doing it. And then now you have school board members that are also stepping down because the risk isn't for them now is not worth reward, because it's becoming draining trying to do your job.
So what is the balance? I think there is this, there's basically the concept is parental rights. Is that what they're calling it? Basically is their right to be involved in the education and of their kid, which I think on its face is clear that is your right. And so what is a better balance between balancing parents' concerns with the fact that school board is an elected position and that they've been given a job for a reason? And do school boards have the amount of power that they should have? Should it be less? Because it seems chaotic to constantly be trying to give in or appease any given parent who's going to come in and be loud, because I have a feeling that how the kind of curriculum I would want for my kid is going to be very different than a parent who is very concerned about the mystical CRT that is being taught in all of our schools now. And I am probably going to be a parent who's much more in favor of trying to teach diversity and inclusion, but there are parents who are very worried about it. So the reason we have a school board, right, is so that you vote for people to make these decisions, because you can't just appease every parent.
Yeah, and it's, I think schools in general, it's just like the broad concept of understanding that a school may have 500 kids with 500 different parents that have 500 different wants. So there's always going to be, I just look at it from my position, there's always decisions that I make that's not going to make everyone happy. And that is just the nature when you're dealing with so many different people. Like, you're never going to please everyone, so you have to go with what the majority may want at times, or what sometimes it may not even be what the majority wants, but what you feel is best for your district, for your school to move forward. So I think, it's a tough battle because from what I've seen, the loudest ones are really the minority in a lot of school districts. But because they're the loudest, people think that they're the majority. And in the school districts where they had a lot of voting for new school board members, the loudest ones were the ones that lost in most of the school districts that I followed.
Yeah.
So it's like, were they really the majority? No. You had a group of silent people, and I think what really needs to happen is you need, like what happened in Whitefish Bay, where they had a lot of concerns with some materials that were in their libraries, and they had a big town hall, and parents that agreed with the material showed up. And I think that is where you have a big disconnect with some districts, is the loud minority is always going to show up. But will the people who support the school board, who support the superintendent, the principal, whoever they support, will the people show up, or will they be quiet? And so often what you see is those people are the ones that are quiet. And then so it makes the loudest ones look like they're the majority, but then they show up and vote, and then you see, hey, maybe they weren't the majority. But those people also need to show up. But then part of it is people aren't willing to have conversations right now. The line has been drawn so deep that no one wants to see the other person's side, where it's like, hey, if this is how they feel that way for a reason, whether it's justified or whether I think it's true or not. I can understand why they feel that way, even though I don't agree with it. And I think that's the biggest struggle that you're seeing in schools, is that you have these two sides where parents and the schools used to be a partnership. Like, they always talk about it takes a village to raise a child, but now it's like the parents are pitted against the schools against the parents, the schools and the kid are against the teachers. It's like it's more of a combative relationship than a collaborative relationship that I see in a lot of schools these days.
Well, I think that'll be interesting, because I know in the second half of this hour we want to talk about how are the teachers doing, and I think that dynamic that's been created probably isn't helping trying to bring teacher retention. But my thought, whenever I hear these conversations about what curriculum is in libraries and worrying about, they'll reference Beloved, which has some, sex scenes in it, or like there was a graphic novel of The Handmaid's Tale, which, if you know what Handmaid's Tale is about, there's sex and rape in it. And so it's like, I feel like a lot of times these parents forget that the internet is free and that their kids can look up pretty much anything they want, and like YouPorn is free, and all you have to do is confirm that you're 18. Not really like a big check of whether or not you are. And so this idea that schools are the ones that are giving them smut and like bad information that is going to corrupt them while they have a computer in their pocket, it's just a little silly to me. But maybe that's just me. Maybe we do need to be very careful about what's in the libraries. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. We'll keep this conversation rolling. Come back in just a minute. This is As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. I am joined today all day by Eddie, Ed, Edward. Take your pick. DeShazer. Said it right that time. Who has a lifelong educator. He currently runs a school, and he does a lot of motivational speaking. Do you speak to teachers when you do your motivational speaking, or is it to other administrators?
So I speak to whoever will listen. So,
Good
sometimes I did a virtual yesterday for a district in Texas, and that was teachers, admins, counselors. I was in Vegas a week ago speaking, and that was it's really all over the board when I tend to, but I love to speak to teachers because I think I can create the best impact for them that they can turn back and create impact for their students. So my brand is Teachers Ed. So teachers are who I love to speak to.
Okay.
But I just like to speak to
You just
people
like to
about
talk.
education. And I don't really it's weird. I don't really like to talk. Sometimes I just want to sit and do nothing, but I love to speak to teachers to encourage them because I know how much it's needed more than ever right now.
More than ever. And so is it through your motivational speaking and talking to teachers that you came up with your new concept that has not launched yet, but the Teacher's Box? So what is it, and what was kind of the motivation behind it?
So the company is Be Well Teacher, and where it came up with was teacher appreciation. A year ago at our school, I was like, I want to do something special for our teachers. So I went out and ordered a bunch of boxes, and then I filled them up with coffee, a book, a shirt, just like a few items that instead of doing like a lot of schools, they're like, hey, here's a $5 gift card, and they send their teachers on their way. And I was like, I wanted to do something special for our teachers, and I wanted to kind of wrap it up as a box. And then once I did it, I just got such great feedback from them that I was like, if our teachers like this, a lot of other teachers could probably love this. So then the box we're doing is more geared towards self-care, because you have a lot of other companies out there that, you can get your I Love Teaching mug or your t-shirts. Like those things are great, but like I want teachers to focus on themselves. And that's something I preach when I speak to teachers, is that it doesn't matter how smart you are. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be an effective teacher no matter how smart or how good you think you are at teaching. So that's really where it was kind of put together. So we're doing, coffee. We're looking at doing some yoga things, some shower steamers, just things so teachers are very selfless. So it's like, how can we encourage teachers to actually put themselves first instead of their kids, their husband, everyone else that they put in front of themselves. And then that's why teachers are leaving left and right.
Yeah.
They're burnt out.
And so it's set up to be it will be set up to be a subscription service where teachers subscribe to it, or how will the business side of it work?
It will not be a subscription. We're really looking at trying to encourage schools to buy them for their teachers.
Oh, okay.
So they can buy them for their teachers, or if teachers want to buy it for themselves, or if you have a teacher friend, you could buy it for that teacher. But then, if teachers love it, they're like, hey, I want to get this again. But my goal is that other people are buying. Teachers ain't. No,
that's what I was saying.
Teachers
That's
aren't
what
making any money. So
I know.
They shouldn't be the ones buying these things for themselves.
But that's interesting. So potentially marketing it to schools and school districts as a appreciation for their teachers.
Yeah, one of the stats that we've looked at is teachers are leaving. Burnout is much quicker, but there is, I think it's 75%. There was a poll that was done, and 75% of teachers don't feel appreciated by their schools. So I think that is the most alarming fact. Like, yeah, teachers are tired, but teachers being tired isn't something that's new to teaching. Teachers
Yeah.
have always been tired. It's just now teachers don't feel appreciated by their administration, by their parents, by their students, by the community, by the country, maybe even by, the legislatures when these bills come out and they just get pushed to the side and ignored. And it's like, you wonder why teachers don't enjoy what they do anymore. The love of it is gone.
Yeah. And that is certainly what I want to talk about in our next segment. But as far as this, like, do you think something like this, because that's a lot, right? Everything you just said, there's a lot to that. And even when you did it for your teachers, how long did the after effects last? Or do you just do a really good job always making your teachers feel appreciated?
I hope that's the case. That would be a question you got to ask them. So our goal is to have 3 a year: back to school, holiday, Christmas time, and then teacher appreciation. So August, November, December, then May. So that's kind of our goal, is if we can position it 3 times a year, so it's not the same items every time, but come Christmas time, you have more holiday themed things. Maybe the candle in there is pine tree or what, whatever sense people love in Christmas. I'm so bad at that. So hopefully no one listening is like, pine tree, that's
Pine
terrible.
tree. Pine Sol? Like, trying to think, what would be the worst candle you could possibly get? Be like, thank you.
Yeah, just lost all of our
Clorox.
customers before we got them right there. So, yeah.
Well, that's great. And so it has not launched yet, but if people want to find more information on either where they can sign up for once it's ready and get this into their schools, plug it. I mean, this is your opportunity to plug it.
So on Instagram, we are Be Well Teacher, and the website is bewellteacher.com. So right now we have a landing page where people can reach out for more information. Right now the boxes are going to be priced at $60, and there's, I think, $95 worth of value in each box. And we're looking at how can we expand that to be, my thing is, how can we give teachers the most possible without breaking their bank? If a teacher does want to buy it for themselves, we want to make sure that they're actually getting their money's worth, and we're not just taking their money and running. But everything is bewellteacher.com. There's a landing page where we are going to be doing discounts if a district wants to buy it for their whole district. But I am also, I have some speaking engagements this fall, and what I'm going to be doing is donating my money that I get paid to buy those districts boxes myself, just because it's needed.
Yeah. Have you had any interest on the side of the products you put into the box, either being donated or sold at a discount to go into the box, knowing that this is for the cause that it's going for?
We have not went down that route. The original hope was to source everything locally from Milwaukee, but just looking at the cost, it was much harder. So the one local company we did use, and they've been an awesome partner with me for so long, is Stone Creek Coffee.
Oh, nice.
They actually, when I did that first box, I told them what I was doing. I paid for it. And then I got an email from them 2 days later that said that they refunded my card and wanted to donate the coffee. So they have been an awesome partner through all of this. And our coffee, with the coffee brand with them that I have, is called Teacher Fuel. So they've been incredible.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to talk about teachers when we get back. This is As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. then it just made me think of him and his bicycle accident, which then made me think of, did you see this week when Pete Buttigieg he was testifying in Congress, and he said, well, at least I'm just happy to have a president who can ride a bicycle. He's good. He's really quick. I like his comebacks when he's on Fox and such. Well, I am joined today by Eddie DeShazer. Did I say it right?
Got it right.
Got it right. All right. That's gonna be the joke for the rest of the day. And we're talking about teachers, and we're talking about education, and I think you'd have to be pretty have your head pretty far in the sand to not be aware that teachers are struggling right now. And in fact, even just this morning, a story was reported here in Waukesha, which is where we are right now, that as of early July, the district has accumulated 95 teacher resignations. Maybe it's not just teachers, but specialist teachers, kind of school staff in general, which is more than double the 45 resignations it had at this time last year. And, anecdotally, on my side, which does not pertain to necessarily Wisconsin, but I spend a lot of time on TikTok, both for my content, but just in general. And there are, teacher TikTok is a thing, right? There's so many teachers out there who have, had huge followings because of their fun content that they create. But there's been a ton of videos that I've seen of teachers quitting and talking about why, all the reasons they're quitting, and how they can make more money if they go to an ed tech company and they're more appreciated and they're not as stressed out. And so, I think even before the pandemic, Wisconsin was in a looming potential teacher shortage. And I think even more now that has probably been sped up, because I think the UW programs, the enrollment is down. People are leaving. People are not joining being teachers. And so, Eddie, are the teachers okay?
The teachers are not okay. When you look at numbers, you're at, close to 80% of teachers feel extremely burnt out. And I think that kind of goes back to what we talked about, where teaching was always a tiring job. But when you don't feel appreciated and there's better opportunities that you can do less and make more money out there, why should I continue to come here every day and have such a rough experience as a teacher? And part of it is like what you said, you picture a 20-year-old that's in school and they go on TikTok and they're like, why should I be a teacher? And every teacher on TikTok is doing what? They're on there complaining. They're posting great, funny content. A lot of it is funny
sometimes it's
content,
complaining,
but it's like how hard your job is.
Yeah.
And it's like, how will you won't attract new people, and their job is very hard. It's tough. And it's not exclusive just to Wisconsin. Like, we had a teacher crisis across the country years ago. As you look at salaries, every other industry's salaries have went up considerably. Teachers have not. But they're, as we learned on March 2020, that they are a critical part of what this country, teaching in schools are the backbone of how society functions. And I thought after that we would have some real changes that would take place to give teachers more support, help more schools. And then come August 2020, everyone's like, get these kids out of our house, get them back in the schools. We don't care about you teachers, just take our kids. And the whole tone of the communities changed from March just to August, where it's like they love teachers for a little bit.
And why? What shifted? Because I feel like there is often this, villainizing of teachers. And I think more so you heard about teachers' unions, but even this, this idea that teachers are, I don't know, they don't deserve more money. They don't deserve more support, and that we ask so much of them, but then should assume that they should be accepting of what they get as far as compensation, and are constantly, at least in this state, not necessarily giving the funding to be able to pay them more, even though they're vitally important. And this is across, whether it's public schools or private schools or charter schools, right? They all need teachers. And so in your career, have you seen that attitude shift? or has it always been there? Like, is there something different that is going on where there is a sliding scale of how much respect teachers get?
I think it's really always been there. It's just I think COVID magnified it a lot more. And now the struggle in schools is, say you have a fifth grader who was out of school for a year and a half. These fifth graders at a third grade social level, but now they're in fifth grade. So teachers need even more support for that, and they're not getting that. So now, you look at, like you had said, Waukesha lost tons of teachers. So now what you're doing is you're putting more weight on the ones that are still there and then wondering why they burn out more. They're already adding more to their plate, and I think that's just why it keeps getting worse and worse is as you lose bodies in a school, the work still has to get done. It's not paperwork that's like, all right, Kristin, we can do this paperwork tomorrow. Like, no, your kids walk in at 9 a.m, and when they walk out, that's your only chance to impact them for that day. Then you try it all again the next day. So I think really what we're seeing has been there. It's just under a bigger magnifying glass with how the last 2 years went with COVID and people being out and virtual. And but I think this has just been, people have taken teachers for granted for the longest. I even think about when we were kids and, the amount of work it takes to be a teacher. It's not just walk out and your day is done. A lot of times, if you have 25 kids, you're grading 25 papers. You're preparing 25 tests. You have 25 kids at 25 different levels in some schools. That is difficult for teachers, and we're expecting more from them, but giving them less.
So because I'm very into politics and policy and stuff, and so I was interested in, from the legal aspect, what has been proposed to potentially be done. And I know earlier this year, Democrats in the state legislature introduced a package of 8 bills to try to alleviate this looming teacher shortage. Now, this did not pass. I should just start there, but I want to list them off and have you tell me how many of those you think would work or make a difference in this, in the problem being teacher retainment and recruitment. So it was set minimum teacher pay tied to legislature's own pay. So that meaning like they make the same amount of money that people who don't work full time, because that's always the thing, right? Teachers get summers off. Guess who's been off since like April?
Yeah.
The state Senate and
always
the Assembly. All right. So set minimum teacher pay tied to legislature's own pay, create an hourly wage for student teachers, establish a non-voting seat for an educator on school boards, set up a teacher pledge loan repayment program, give bonuses to teachers who stay in the same district, pay teachers for their prep time, like preparing lessons and grading, pay teachers for time spent on non-classroom activities like supervising lunch, give teachers the same health insurance received by Wisconsin legislators. Tours. What do you think of that package?
I mean, I think a lot of these are really good. The struggle is, for most solutions, you need money.
Yeah.
And it's like, where are you going to just magically come up with more money? But I think that a big thing is finding young people who want to be teachers. And I think that is where the struggle is, because teacher is not a glamorous job. Kids that are coming out of high school, they see people on YouTube and TikTok making thousands of dollars. So why would I subject myself to teaching when I can make money easier doing other things? I love loan repayment programs. I think that's important. If someone decides they want to go to a school to be a teacher and that's something that they're committed to doing, I think we have to be creative with making it. We need to make it easier for people that want to be teachers to become teachers, even in the state of Wisconsin. Like, there's teachers that I've seen that have certifications, doctorate degrees, all of these, their whole wall will be covered in plaques, but they're terrible teachers. But then there's other people that have high school diplomas that could teach 100 kids in a room and the kids are engaged. So it's like, how do we turn those people into qualified? And I say qualified to the state standard of having a certification. Like, there's a lot of teachers that we see coming into education now that are social workers or other positions that are very similar and they want to have a greater impact of teaching. But now it's like, okay, to become an actual teacher, I have to go back to school, and now I have to spend another $15,000. And it's like, okay, but my salary is only going to be $50,000. So I think we have to find ways to make it easier for people that want to become teachers to become and be recognized as teachers. So these districts, Waukesha, all the districts that are struggling to find teachers, have people that they can fill those spaces with.
Because what is the path right now? So say you go to any of the UW schools and going in you want to be a teacher. So you can't become a teacher just with your bachelor's.
So you get your bachelor's and you pass your praxis, you get your certification, then you are officially a teacher.
Okay.
But what I've seen, especially in I would say the last 6-7 years, you see a lot of people that have a bachelor's in arts or marketing, or my bachelor's degree is in marketing, but my master's is in nonprofit business management. My doctorate's going to be in education, or is going to be in leadership. But a lot of the most dynamic teachers
That was
I've
a
seen
nice little
recently,
drop you put there. My doctorate. Keep going.
Put my nose up for those that can see me on video. But a lot of people I've seen are people that this is their second choice, and I think that's
Being a teacher.
Yes. So when they got into school, it was like, all right, I'm going to be in business. And then they don't like business. And now they're like, hey, I want to go back to school to become a teacher. So now you're asking people to go back to school when it's like, they're probably smart enough to be a teacher. And I think there has to be easier ways, whether it's taking a test and now I don't have to sit in school, or it's if I'm able to be a para in a school for 5 years and then my principal can sign off that now I can get a certification. I just think we have to make it easier for people to become teachers. And I think that's a legislative issue that our CAGC has been pushing as well, because I hear it from other districts. Like, we have paras that are outstanding, but they're not officially a teacher. So when teachers leave, I have to go out and find new teachers, versus the great para I have here, I should be able to promote them into a teacher.
That's really interesting. So that's one solution, is making it easier to become a teacher. So that kind of deals with the recruitment part. What do you think can help with the retainment problem?
I mean, you're going to have to pay people more.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really just, money doesn't fix every problem, but money will be a good start. If you are not paying teachers a good livable wage, you're going to keep losing teachers. I love the idea of being able to help teachers get homes. I mean, similar to what they have for the VA.
Yeah.
VA I think it's like 1% down or some really low amount. And now someone can be in a home that they own. That's how you create wealth. And it's hard for a teacher to create wealth starting at a $45,000 or $40,000 salary. It's hard to create wealth if this is really what you want to do, unless you get to a district where you're there for 25 years and now you're at $80,000, $90,000. But I think stuff like that, being able to, if you don't want to pay them more, what other perks can we give them? Should their health care be completely free? Can we get them better loan? Maybe there's a loan for homes that they can get at a lower percentage. So it's not 20% down or 10% down. It's 1% down because you're a teacher. There are forgivable loans for teachers that teach in high poverty districts, where I think after 5 years, your loans can get forgiven on a percentage basis. Like, we have to, if we don't want to pay them more, we have to be creative with the benefits that we're doing with teachers.
Yeah, and for reference of what you were talking about, this isn't at the Wisconsin level. This was in Congress. Representative Eric Swalwell, can't pronounce his last name either. Representative Johanna Hayes introduced an Educator Down Payment Assistance Act, which would help homeowners make home ownership more accessible and affordable for teachers. And that was one of the ones I brought up to you, because I was like, I think this is something that a lot of people don't even think about. And like that incentive, because a lot of professions have that, right? Like, if you go and get your law degree and you work in nonprofit law and you're not a DA, a public defender, like, eventually, if you stick around long enough in that and not go to corporate law, they will forgive your loans. And so that is the incentive to stay. So I think it would be great. But again, we have to have the willingness to pay for it with taxes.
Yeah, and that is there for a lot of teachers, but it's only exclusive to districts with high poverty levels, where it's like, those aren't the only districts that teachers are struggling in. And I think that's the misconception, is that it's like, teachers in Milwaukee are struggling more than teachers in the suburbs. No, every district has problems. They just look different.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to take a short break and then change the subject to junk food. Do you have some junk food in mind that you like to? All right. This is As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin, Brey. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. My guest today is Eddie DeShazer, and he is a big fan of Queen. So I think we got a lot of Queen coming in and out of breaks, which I'm not complaining about. Well, it's National Junk Food Day, and I am on. So you are good friends with my fiance Mike, and we are on a text thread with his siblings, so his two sisters and my soon-to-be brother-in-law, his brother-in-law Mark, and Mark and I probably. I love candy, but Mark is just a trash bag. Like, and he'll admit it. Like, he's like trash. He's like, if you put trash on top of trash, you'll never get a stomach ache. It's like, I don't think that's science, but okay. So he texted us last night and he said, have any of you ever eaten graham crackers with butter?
Yes.
You have?
Yes. Oh, no. Jeez.
So my
peanut butter, I'm thinking.
Oh, I haven't done peanut butter or butter.
That
So at first I'm like,
good.
I was like, graham crackers with butter. But then I had to stop and check myself because when I was a kid, I was clearly left to my own devices that I was allowed to do this. We didn't have a lot of rules with food intake, apparently. I would take a package of graham crackers and a tub of frosting meant to probably ice a cake, and I would dip the graham crackers into the frosting like it was a Costco-sized Dunkaroo and like call it a snack. And the fact that I was allowed to do this and didn't get in trouble, because I'm sure that frosting was there for like an actual birthday party cake that my mom was going to make. So I couldn't judge him too harshly because I just feel like the butter wouldn't do anything for the flavor of the graham cracker.
But butter is good.
Butter, yeah, I mean, butter is good. So I was just curious. So what was like as a kid? Was there any very super weird or innovative discoveries you made as far as junk food went, of like what you combined together?
I mean, a lot of it, our household was a big Little Debbie's household. So it was just like, that was like my after school run in the house and grab whatever Little Debbie, like the oatmeal cream pies or like the ho-hos, like. There was never the only like really, and I don't even think it's that random, the only really random food that people would see and think was crazy was with peanut butter and jelly and pickles. But I don't know if that's really junk food, but that to me is like the best sandwich that there is.
Dill pickles?
Yeah, just like a nice regular pickle, make your peanut butter and jelly and put the pickles.
Do you still make this?
Herbert's and Gerbert's actually has it on their menu. I think it's on their menu. Either that or they make it when I would go in there and ask them for it. But
that's a tough sell. I mean, I can kind of, because the salty and the sweet, but. Ugh. So then what is your go-to junk food?
My go-to junk food, goldfish crackers and Twix would be my
Together?
Why not? But I mean, I love them both. But no, those are like our favorite. My wife and I love goldfish. Our dog loves the goldfish crackers. Like goldfish crackers and Twix are like my weak
I don't
spot.
even know the last time I had a Twix.
I actually have.
Do they still make the cookies and cream Twix?
Oh yeah. Now their thing is like we have the left and the right Twix. Like their branding of that.
Oh God.
But on this list, it has popular junk food by state, and Twix is the most popular for the state of Wisconsin, according to this list.
Really?
Yep.
See, and I want Twix to have to decide. What are you? Are you a cookie or are you a candy bar? Just pick one.
Fair. I think anything covered entirely in chocolate would be a candy bar, but I guess there's probably some, like, because Thin Mints, I think, are covered entirely in chocolate, so maybe that is certainly a cookie.
Yeah, I guess I would kind of say the shape makes it feel more like a candy bar because it's long
and
narrow. But I would definitely consider Twix a candy bar.
What do you think of whatchamacallits?
I don't know if I've had one. I don't remember having.
I'm gonna buy you one because that is my all-time favorite candy bar. It has like a little like Rice Krispie type things in it. It's caramel. That was very good. But I've never been as much the chocolate candy bar or cookie. I could eat a bag of Skittles every day. Every day.
Makes my tongue hurt hearing that.
And so I was remiss when 2 days in a row, I was scrolling through the social medias, and on the first day, CNN had some article about how it's not healthy to have any amount of alcohol under 40, and so the next day there was some new lawsuit that some group is suing Skittles because it's like toxic for you. I don't know if it's proven or not, but seeing both of those back to back, I was like, this is not my week. Like, let's just let me live.
I'm just curious, do you separate them by colors? And if you do, what is the order in which you eat them?
I don't. That I did that more as a kid. Like I ate a lot of runts as a kid, and I'd get a box of runts and I'd eat the lime and banana and orange first, and then I'd save the cherries and the strawberries, so the pink and red ones, and I'd eat those all together last. Really, I don't know how I was not an obese child, because the things that I listed off that I was allowed to eat is shocking. But now I'm a big fan of the purple bag tropical flavors, and I just mix them together.
What about
that's my go-to.
Starburst? I used to get criticized because my favorite Starburst is the lemon one. And I think it's because as a kid, no one ever wanted the lemons. And I'm like, I want more. So I love the lemon
So you
ones.
taught yourself to like lemon.
we had a poll. I did a poll on Instagram, and I had people rank them in order. And like when I said lemon was my first, it was like you would think I said it was like the most divisive thing I've ever said on Instagram. The way people came at me that I loved yellow Starburst.
I mean, but that's like proven because they literally make packages now that are just the pink and the red. That's how bad they know that the other two flavors are. They're like, well, all right, here you go. We'll just give you the ones that everyone actually eats, and they throw the other ones out. And so you want the tossaways.
Love the lemons.
Do you love lemon other things?
The only thing I don't enjoy is like lemon desserts. And it's weird because like I love lemon flavored anything else, but I do not like.
So not a lemon meringue pie guy?
No, do not like that.
Lemon bars?
Nope. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah.
What about a lemon popsicle?
That sounds.
What about lemonade?
Love lemonade.
Okay.
Lemon popsicle sounds like it'd be really good though.
So is it the creaminess that is? You're like, I'll keep the
yeah.
cream out of my
Really
lemon.
weird. Yeah, I have no idea. I'm a much more sweet person. My wife is like the salty. So like desserts, our dessert choices are complete opposite. Give me the strawberry raspberry cheesecakes. Give her the salty desserts.
What's a salty dessert?
Oh geez, I can't even think of one. Like more of like a creme brulee, like with like the topping on with something on top of it. So that's more her. Like I'm like a cheesecake, fruits with drizzled syrup all over it,
Ice
like,
cream.
Give me all
All
sweet
of it.
stuff. Yep.
All right. I have a pretty good balance between the two, I think. I used to have a really big sweet tooth, and now I have calmed that down. But by the end of the day, sometimes I think my bigger problem is that I think what I craved as a kid of having something sweet at night now just has turned into a glass of wine. And it's like, oh, is it 5 o'clock? Well, I think I deserve this. And is that junk food? Or is that being a little too lenient on the definition of junk
It's
food?
junk food.
All right. Well, we're going to take another break for the top of the hour news. But when we come back, I want to talk about some innovative ideas to hard problems. I think specifically hard problems when it comes to Milwaukee and Milwaukee's youth. So stick with us, stick around for the news, and when we come back, it'll still be As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey.
Live programming for WAUK Radio 540 AM and 101 FM is produced right in the Shaw in beautiful downtown Waukesha, Wisconsin.
The Shaw 101 FM, WAUK 540 AM, Wisconsin's home for rational talk radio.
For rational talk radio.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin, Hour 2. It is 1:06, and I have been joined today and will be joined for the rest of the hour by Eddie DeShazer, who is an executive director of the Greater Holy Temple Christian Academy. He's a motivational speaker, lifelong educator, entrepreneur, Milwaukee. Well, I guess you're a Milwaukee in your heart. You don't technically live there right now, but
I don't live there, but I grew up. Well, I grew up in Glendale and then moved to Milwaukee when I was in, was it 8th grade maybe? So I've lived in Milwaukee.
No, but I feel like you're in you are a Milwaukee community leader, but you don't technically live in Milwaukee. No. But you're very invested in Milwaukee as a place that has things to improve on.
1,000%.
And so we were talking about, especially with the youths, and you obviously work with the youths at your school. You were a youth. You were a Milwaukee youth. But even before you got here today, Earl Ingram, who has the show on this station from 10 to 11, he was telling me about a program he started, which sounds incredible, and it actually sounds like it's having a fair amount of success. I think he said it's called the Voices of the Elders. And so because he saw, even though he's 68 and he's ready to do less because he's been doing a lot his entire life to give back to his community, but he was seeing the Kia boys and all these cars getting stolen and just knowing that so much of this comes back to kids need money and they need something to do. And so his program sounds like it's a 7-week program, right? This pilot year, they're having 200 kids, 200 boys from 10 to 15, and they just have programming every day, and you get $40 a day just for coming. And I was like, so it's been successful so far? He goes, it looks like we're going to try to up it for next summer to be 1,000 kids, which is awesome and a lot of work. But one of the articles you sent me, which I hadn't seen, is similar in that giving kids the proposal potentially to give something for kids to do, but also potentially pay them, because sometimes that is the incentive to show up. Just like for all of us who have jobs, it's like, well, you get paid to do this, and you learn things along the way at your job, like different skill sets and work ethic, etc. But just assuming that they're going to show up just because of their own free will sometimes doesn't work like that. So what is this program for the Milwaukee County supervisors have proposed, or at least a couple of them have proposed? Yeah,
so it's called the County Parks Youth Corps, I believe it is, and I'm not overly familiar with it, but I know that when I saw the headline, I loved it because I was at a meeting where they were looking for board members for the county parks, and they are struggling to staff the county parks. So it's
the county parks are struggling in general, right? Yeah.
So it's like, how do you improve this? You're not going to go out and get 30, 40-year-olds. Why not teach kids and give them some income at a younger age? You're teaching them skills that, could translate to now they have a landscaping company when they get older. And I just think you're also getting them bought into their community. And I think that is so important, that you're getting kids engaged at an early age, because right now most of kids' engagement is sports or like those type of activities, not as much work and skill related. So I love aspects like that where it's like, okay, now you're teaching kids meaningful skills that can translate into a job down the road.
Because this is very early, right? So what I understood is that it's even the proposal is just asking the Parks Department to do a study on the feasibility of how this could work, and then additionally how there could be a potential partnership with NPS as potentially giving student credit and different ways, which I love, because I always think kids learn in different ways, right? Like, I'm pretty open about, I have pretty significant ADHD, but I was not hyperactive, but I certainly was sitting there not paying attention. But, certain kids who now I think there's more understanding from teachers who know that there's certain kids, like you give them fidget spinners and they stand up in the back of the classroom, then that it's not the most natural thing in the world for a child to be sitting in a seat all day. But and also to think that kids learn in different ways. And so learning like hands-on through doing something at a park instead of sitting in your seat, like I think finding more experimental ways is always a good thing to have kids who feel like if they don't fit in the model of how we've set school up, just assume, well, I'm dumb or I'm bad at school. And it's like, you're not, this is how your brain works.
Yep. No, I mean, because you have kids that may not be good at math, may not be good at reading, but if you give that kid a shovel and a hammer, this kid could dig you the biggest trench and then build you the biggest shed on top of it. Like those are skills that some kids are going to have that other kids just don't. So like, how can you, like you said, how can you engage those kids? And I think this is a great opportunity because you're giving kids credit. Listen, what kid in high school doesn't like to get out of school?
Yeah.
So now you're telling me I can get credits, I can get out of school, and I get to go work in the park and get some fresh air while,
be outside,
all my other friends are in a stuffy classroom. Like, sign me up. But you're creating opportunities for kids that a lot of times don't get opportunities. Like I went to Nicolay High School. We had all kind of internships. I would see kids in and out of school going to law offices and going to all these places to get internships. But it's like, MPS, those kids need the same opportunities that everyone else has, and now they're also helping their community while getting opportunities.
Yeah.
So I think it's a win-win for everyone. I love that the county executives are looking at doing this.
Yeah, I think this is the kind of innovative ideas that I think with the intersection of departments and financial issues that Milwaukee specifically is dealing with, like having the departments actually work together. Like, all right, like let's get creative and think outside the box and have solutions that actually fix a lot of these different problems versus trying to fix them in isolation. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I saw, I think in this last week that probably only made headlines because it was Pat Connaughton and he's, the Buck star or whatever. But I didn't realize, I saw the headline with his name in it, but didn't realize that it's not his program. He was just speaking at this MKE CRE summer high school immersion program that is it's a week-long program for high schoolers. So things like sophomore, junior, senior high schoolers. And it's meant to help them, like specifically it's students of color or students from lower incomes or underrepresented, to learn more about career opportunities in commercial real estate, which me as a high school student, that I probably would not have been as interested in that. But like, it's a very profitable business to get into. And so I think it's through Marquette, and I'd have to look up and see who else was behind the actual program. But they had Pat Connaughton and I think his business partner come in because they've done so much development and real estate throughout Milwaukee. It was interesting because I guess the day that he came in, to the credit of the kids, they didn't really ask him anything about being a Bucks player. Like it immediately zeroed in on getting started and how do you get capital and all the questions of how you even get your foot in the door in like a commercial real estate career. And like that seems super innovative and outside of the box because you certainly aren't learning about commercial real estate in high school.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's just where schools have dropped the ball in the last 20 years is schools are still very factory centered. Kids sit in straight rows, teach. It's like a sweatshop. And, in the 80s that worked.
Did it?
I mean,
or was it just accepted that that's how it should work?
It was more accepted because people were going to work in factories, that you're almost training kids to know that when you get older, you're going to be working in factories. And I think the factory days, as you see in Milwaukee, is one of the last major cities that is heavy in factories. But I think these are the things that you have to get kids in front of. Like, you talked about the Kia boys. And it's not that these kids aren't smart. If a kid can hotwire a car, they're a smart kid. But how do we redirect their intelligence into something that's productive for the city versus destructive for the city? So it's, things like this, the fastest way to wealth tends to be through real estate. So are we teaching our kids this? Are we teaching them about interest rates? Are we teaching them about the parks and nature? Like those are things kids need to know that schools aren't teaching them. There's not enough time in a school day. And B, it's just the curriculum is not centered around these things. But I love it.
Is there any other innovative proposals or programs? Because I remember when Mike was running for mayor, there was a lot of ideas at the different forums. I think Lena at one point had thrown out the idea of putting like a racetrack on the north side, which I don't know how feasible that was, but at least people were talking about it, right? And so has there any other ideas that you've heard that you think has legs that could keep either kids employed or engaged or showing up to school that you think deserves more support?
I mean, I think the problem is that everyone loves to talk about it, but no one actually loves to go out and do it. And part of that is not probably their situation. It's hard to get through all the tape to get some of these things done and to go out and get funding. But there's none off the top of my head that I can think of, but I do know that kids need more things to do. You know, when we were growing up, we had a lot more activities to do, and kids just don't have that. I mean, kids can't even go into the mall without a parent now. And that, was because of...
Is this like Mayfair or which? Because I'm
like,
trying to think of what... Cause really, there's no malls left in Milwaukee. And Midtown's basically pretty empty.
Yeah, it's going to be a storage center coming up. So, yeah, I mean, there's our kids need more activities that can give them skills that they can use when they get older. I love stuff like this, and you're teaching those multiple intelligences that kids have. And it's, not every kid is going to be a great person, good in school. But can these kids learn about construction? Like, I know a lot of guys in construction that aren't the most book smart, but they keep book smart people around them because they know how to build things, and that's how they monetize their skills. And I think it's in what Pat is doing. I love that he's used his platform and he's giving back he's not just saying he's going to do it, he's going out and doing it.
Yeah.
And the gentleman that you talked about earlier, it's like he had an idea and he did it. There's a lock-in that's taking place at the YMCA on the Northwest side. They did it 2 weeks ago, and the next one is next weekend, where they had 30 kids, and they were all kids from the Northwest side of Milwaukee. They brought them to the YMCA, and it started at 7 p.m. and it ended at 8 a.m. Like, those are things that people don't know about, that are things that people are doing to keep kids off the street and give kids skills and experiences that they need. Because if we're not giving it to them, they're going to get it from somewhere, like you said, whether it's on their phone, on YouTube. They're going to get it from somewhere. It might as well come from us.
And that's interesting because, the amount of, I feel like you throw a stone and you find someone who has their own nonprofit that is working with, whether it's in sports or violence prevention and all of this different stuff. And so often is it just getting the information to kids and parents, because there is a lot of stuff out there. But again, like you said, it's like, if you don't know that it exists, how do you take advantage of it?
Yeah, and I think it's getting information out there, but I also think that people need to collaborate more. Two nonprofits can coexist and work together. And I think that maybe the struggle sometimes for people is, how do we come together? Like, every year you see backpack drives all over the city. This one has 200, this one has 400, this one has 3,000, this one's over here. And it's like, how can we all come together to work together so now your network and my network become one network?
All right, we're going to take another break, and when we come back...
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt McNeil, and I'm looking forward to joining you on weekday afternoons at 3 p.m. starting July 5th on 101 FM The Shaw and WAUK 540 AM. It's 1 hour every day where we'll talk a lot about regional and national politics, but we'll also talk about a lot of non-political things, too. And you're welcome to call into the show at 952-946-6205. For 1 hour each day, let me be your afternoon quickie. It's the Aggressive Progressive, The Matt McNeil Show, 3 p.m. weekday afternoons starting July 5th on 101 FM The Shaw and WAUK 540 AM.
President Trump lost the election. Joe Biden won the election.
Collectively, Republicans got 1.661 million votes, 51,000 more votes than Trump got.
He exhausted his cases. He exhausted the court challenges.
All the Republicans voted for Trump the way they voted for the assembly candidacy. He would have won.
It was not rigged. It was not stolen. Donald Trump lost the election. Joe Biden won the election. It's really clear.
This message was paid for by the People for People Corporation. Donate online at p4ppc.org.
Join the WAUK 540 AM and 101 FM The Shaw team when we broadcast live from the Waukesha Farmers Market, beginning Saturday, June 4th and lasting all summer long. Former Waukesha Alderman Don Brown hosts This Week in Waukesha, 8 to 9 a.m. Then former U.S. Attorney James Santel launches his new Saturday morning show from 9 to 11. Raised in the Shaw with host Joel Clayfish rounds out the Saturday morning lineup, 11 to noon. Come to the Waukesha Farmers Market for the only radio program broadcasting live from the Shaw.
Hey, this is Matt from Design Garden. Remember when the internet was new? Back then, you had to leave your house to start a business. Companies used to pay programmers bags of cash to get online. Now, small businesses can get online with a Facebook business page, or Squarespace, or Google My Business, or WordPress. But which tools should you use? Can you afford to go down the wrong path? Design Garden uses modern tools to build your website the right way. Find us online at design.garden. Again, that's design.garden.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. This might be my favorite. I mean, it's hard to pick a favorite Queen song. Bohemian Rhapsody, obviously, I think is the obvious one. That's a commitment, though, to listen to the entire song. But Somebody Love is, it's a good one. There's a lot of good ones, though. Oh, I am joined by Eddie DeShazer. I don't know why I'm struggling so much with that today. I think it's because I've gotten in my head about it and can't do it anymore. But Eddie DeShazer.
There it is.
There it is. What are your thoughts on the new renderings of the Public Museum that came out this week?
I loved it when I saw it because let me start by saying I love how Milwaukee has beautiful old architecture, but
Same.
I love the infusion of newer and more trendier looking things. Like you go to other big cities and you see a lot of newer things. I would love to see Milwaukee hold on to our really historic looking buildings and then do some newer things like this. But I think it looks really cool. It reminds me of the the shipyard in New York. It's a big like brass building in New York, and it has it's like a weird shape.
Oh, the new one.
I forget what it's called, but it reminded me a lot of that when I first saw the renderings of it.
It does remind me of that, and now I can't think of what it is. But it opened while I was still living in New York, and it was on the west side, and it's it's massive, and you can also walk like the spiral of it. And so, but yeah, it's basically like a huge art project that is also, it's not technically a mall, but there's tons of shopping in it. It's a huge entertainment.
Hudson Yards.
There you go. Hudson Yards.
Yep.
I thought it was cool. It's not built yet, but it was funny because I looked up Matt Wild from Milwaukee Record, who always has something snarky to say. His description was, quote, "Everyone is an architect day on Monday when the Milwaukee Public Museum unveiled new renderings of the new Milwaukee Public Museum. Cool, said some. Awful, cried others. Us, we think the new place looks pretty neat, like a fleet of Jawa sandcrawlers ribbed for your pleasure." And so I think it looks cool. I think having unique buildings like that is probably always good. Like think about how much, you see the art museum on Lake Michigan that looks like a spaceship. I think was it iCarly that literally did use it as like a set for a spaceship or something like that? There was some show that used it that was like, this isn't a museum, it's an aircraft. And
it's been used for quite a bit.
Yeah, so I think it's a good thing, but the more interesting piece that I missed that you pointed out to me yesterday is that it may not keep the name the Public Museum because it's technically run by a private nonprofit and it will in the future not always be property of the county. Is that, it's not decided yet, but was that a proposal that I just totally missed from earlier this year?
I think that, and I'm not like completely positive, but all the stuff I have seen was that it's a 501c3 that's going to be running it, and they will be taking a lot of private donations to keep it running. As we know, you see what's happening in our schools, our parks, our museums, especially in Milwaukee. The public funding is not where it needs to be, and that's a whole different episode. But they're raising millions and millions of dollars from private people to get this, so it'll be open to the public.
Yeah, like they're not going to charge you to get into to see it, but it's not going to be we're not paying for it as taxpayers necessarily.
From my understanding, yes, and we won't directly be paying for it. I feel like there's always an indirect cost when when these type of buildings go up, whether it's taxes that get added onto things or money grants that come out. Like it looks like 40 million is coming from Wisconsin, 45 million from Milwaukee County, and then another 25 million from private donations. So it's the money's really coming from all over. But I mean, I think it's going to be great for the city. I think the city needs more places like that where when people come from out of town, they go to Summerfest, they love to see the art museum. But how can we spread things like this across the city so it's not all of that impact doesn't always just land right next to Pfizer?
Yeah, and I think, and with such a unique looking building like that, it becomes a destination onto itself. But I think going back to the name thing, I mean, just in the time that I've lived in Milwaukee, I think there'd be a lot of people who would be very upset if, because one of the suggestions where the name could change to is the Wisconsin Museum of Nature and Culture or something like that instead of the Milwaukee Public Museum. And I feel like people would have a conniption if they found out that if it was not going to be called the Public Museum anymore, because people don't like change
at all.
And so does it matter? Why change the name? I think there would be so much pushback on that if they go through with it, because I feel like the argument isn't even that strong because it insinuates that it's a publicly funded entity. Is that why? That's the only reason why? It's like, no, this is just what it's always been called.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, you saw when County Stadium became Miller Park.
And then when Miller Park became American
Family Insurance Park, people complained when they said the name of Pfizer, and now it rolls right off your tongue, and that was such a struggle for people right away.
Yeah. AmFam is fine. American Family, well, that's what I've joked multiple times, as you said, with public funding consistently drying up for these things that we all can enjoy, and the expectation that to pick up the slack goes to corporations or very wealthy people, and then it just puts us into a corner of like, well, it just depends on what they want to fund now, right? And so I joke that eventually on that was like welcome to Wisconsin sign. Eventually it's going to be like American Family Insurance. American Family Insurance, welcome you to Wisconsin, because we sponsor everything.
Yep.
I think they sponsored the fireworks this year. Because last year, even though COVID was in remission, I guess, around July of July 4th last year, if that's the best word you want to use for it, because it's not over. They didn't do it last year because there weren't enough workers to help with the fireworks, and they didn't have enough money to pay for it. So then they announced that last year American Family Insurance was going to help pay for the fireworks this year. So
thank you, AmFam.
Thank you, AmFam. All right, we're going to take a little bit of a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about school choice.
A progressive voice for rural Wisconsin.
after time. I've done my sentence, but committed no crime.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. My guest today is Eddie DeShazer, who's been a great guest. We've been talking a lot about schools and his experience working in schools, running schools, teaching. And this is kind of a big topic that is very controversial, I think, especially in the state of Wisconsin. And it's one that I don't feel like I understand well. I think there is, and it's school choice. And so the idea that I think for someone who doesn't have kids yet, and it often feels like this is an issue that falls very distinctly down partisan lines, that if you are a Democrat, you're all in on public schools and funding public schools and think that having school choice is harmful to public schools. And it seems like Republicans have really taken up the charge when it comes to charter schools and school choice, at least in this state. And so your school technically is a charter school or a choice school? Because even there's a difference, right?
Yeah, so we are a choice school. Really the biggest difference between choice and charter is usually backed by a large organization, whether it's UWM, Milwaukee Public Schools has some charter schools that they back. I believe Marquette used to. I don't know if they do anymore. UWM, I think, had one. And choice is usually private and can have religion. Charter schools can also not have religion in them.
Okay. And do they fund it differently?
Yes. The amount of funding is more for charter schools than it is for choice, and it is more for public than it is for charter and choice. So public schools in Milwaukee, public schools, I want to say, and don't quote me on this, I think it's like $14,000 per student, where our school gets about $8,000 per student.
But then that's still, so technically it's private, but you don't charge tuition.
Yes, parents qualify by being at under a certain income threshold, but then once they qualify, so if you have a 4-year-old and you qualify, and then you get a job that makes you millions of dollars in a few years, your student is, once they are a part of the program, they stay a part of the program until they leave the program. So if a student stays in a choice school or a school that participates in a choice program, they can stay in there from 4 years old all the way to 12th grade. If they do leave, then the parents have to requalify, and some parents, as they improve their financial standings, they may not be able to qualify. So many parents, when they're in, they try to stay in.
So I don't even know if you can answer, but why has this become so political? Like what? Because I think we even saw it, we talked about this, I think, a little over a year ago when we were just at the Hive. We were at Mike's office, and it was during the state superintendent race between Deborah Kerr and now Deb Underly. And Underly had a huge amount of backing from Democrats. Like the amount of spending they did on that race versus Deborah Kerr, who was kind of backed by Republicans, but they didn't match the funding at all. And I think she got there was also a bad tweet that she had sent out, but because she had kind of been embraced by Republicans, there was almost a backlash against her. And you had said that that's not necessarily even her politics at all. It's just become this issue that I think even now, I think if I were to make a video supporting school choice, knowing that a lot of the people who follow me on TikTok or whatever the other As Goes Wisconsin channels, I'm sure I would hear about it, because I think there is this all or nothing, you either support public schools or you don't. And so what is the danger in trying, or what is the argument of why some people feel so adamant about not supporting school choice?
I think the biggest struggle for people, and as someone that's been in school choice, but I've also done a lot of work with public schools, I can understand what people's frustrations are. It is being public. Their thought is it's being publicly funded, and I don't want to fund a religious school. 100%. Do I agree with it? No. Do I understand? I completely understand. I also think there's a lot of misinformation out there. Choice schools don't have to do X, Y, or Z. There's so much, and this is not just to schools. This is just everywhere. People can say something and it just gets legs and people believe it and they run with it, as we'll see tonight with the January 6th stuff. But there's so much misinformation out there that choice schools don't have to follow guidelines from the Department of Public Instruction. That's just flat out false. We have to get audited. We go through all the same things. We have to teach the same curriculums. There's really not much of a difference on that. We go through all the same guidelines. We have to do a lot of the same reporting that public schools do. But I think when Scott Walker was in office, there was more of an attack on public schools, and that is how the public perceived it. Whether that was his intention or not, I can't speak on that, but that is how it was perceived. So at this point, then people were pushing back. I personally know Deb Kerr. She was the superintendent at a public school. But it's one of those things, the moment and people always get shocked when they talk to me, because on many things, I would say I'm liberal with a lot of my beliefs. But then when we talk about choice schools, people will lash out at me as though, I'm Republican, where it's like, I support any school that's good. If there is a bad school, whether it is choice, charter, public, we need to try to fix it. I don't care, because when it's all said and done, for me, it's about the kids. It's not about the body that's teaching them. I don't care if it's a Catholic school in Waukesha or if it's public school in Milwaukee. I want all of our kids to have a good education. I think parents deserve options. A lot of the parents in the city of Milwaukee, they only get what's put right in front of them. And I don't think that's fair. And I think that is why the program was originally created. Is that still what it's completely about? Probably not, because as you know, over time, agendas get pushed and things get swayed left and right. And that's kind of where we are now, where it's just a strong divide. And I think the people that lose out the most are the ones we should care about the most, and that's the kids.
And so is the assumption on someone who is, for lack of, I don't know what the right term would be, anti-charter schools, anti-choice schools, is it the thought that by the mere existence of them is taking away from the public schools from getting better?
Yeah, because the thought is that the funding, it affects the public school funding, which it partially does, but public schools are funded much differently than a choice school. So for our school, once a kid leaves, they're gone. We don't get funded for them at the next time a payment comes out. Whereas public schools, and I don't know if this is still the situation. I know a couple of years ago, public schools were on rolling averages. So they were paid whether kids were leaving or not. They're just going on a rolling average of how many kids were enrolled in the school. So their funding is much different. The other difference is if our school runs out of dollars, we close. We can't run a deficit. Our building will close. A lot of public schools can run off a deficit because they can just grab money from wherever money comes from in big cities. And that's not a Milwaukee thing. I'm talking really across the country. The funding is not exactly what people think, but when you hear politicians with the speaking points of, they're taking this and they're taking that, people run with it without doing their own research. And I think that's where the more people know, I think the more people will accept, unless someone is just like, I don't want to fund a religious school. Then I completely understand where they're coming from, and I don't blame them for feeling that way, because if I felt that way, that's a fact. There is public dollars funding religious schools. That's a fact. A lot of other things.
Well, it was a Supreme Court decision that just came down this year, right? I mean, not even a month ago. Mm-hmm. So the other thing I feel like potentially the reason why this was embraced so much by Republicans, or as a party thing, is the idea of competition, the idea of merit-based funding. And like you said, if you are a school that is run almost like a business, because if you don't have enough kids, or if you run out of money, you close, versus being a public school that you find a way one way or another, even if you're run out of money, it kind of makes sense of why they maybe would embrace it. But the thing that I hear then when we talk about statewide choice, because you talk about it in a place like Milwaukee where there's a lot of kids, But if you think about there's because we have a population decline problem across basically every county besides Dane County, there's less and less kids across the state in any municipality, village, town, county. And so schools are closing because there's just not enough kids to fill them. So you have kids who are on buses for 45 minutes, an hour just to get to the closest school to them. In those places, I mean, it feels like a charter school wouldn't even make sense because there's not even enough kids to fill them. So it does feel like something that is specific to Milwaukee, but it doesn't even have legs really in Madison either. It's like such a regional problem, like thing down here.
And so in some of the like Green Bays, you have, say, like a Lutheran school where you have a lot of kids whose parents can't afford to send them there, but then you may have, you know, say I only make X amount of dollars. They may have 20, they have 500 kids, they have 20 choice seats available for that Lutheran school in Green Bay. So once those seats are filled, then they have a waiting list. So I think that's part of it. You have a lot of schools. Marquette High School participates in choice program, Wisconsin Lutheran. There's a lot of schools that are very well-off schools that also accept choice schools. And I think there's such a big benefit there because there's kids that I have seen from our school that have ended up at schools like that. And these are opportunities that their parents never could have afforded. And because of the choice program, these kids got a great education. One of our valedictorians, she's the president of the Black Student Union at Marquette now. And she got there, she was at our school, which her mother wouldn't have been able to afford more than likely. But now she's at Marquette. She's went to Pius, dominated there. Now is at Marquette. But like for some of these kids, this is an opportunity that they just won't get. But it's giving kids opportunities. And I think that's what's important. Also giving parents choices. When it's all said and done, every parent, no matter where you're from or how much money you make, deserves choices. And I think that's not just unique to education. People in life deserve choices. And a lot of people don't have choices. They are stuck with what they're given because that's all they can afford, or that's what their neighborhood gives them. And it's like, how can we give more parents more choices?
So are there solutions out there? I mean, get rid of the rhetoric because, you know, people are going to believe whatever they believe. But are there solutions out there that you've seen that like both can exist and both can get better? So obviously MPS has its own, a lot of problems. And so is there a way to embrace all the different options that are available while also working towards improving MPS? And like, what does that even look like?
Yeah. And I think it's kind of what we were just talking about. Like, there needs to be more collaboration. You know, we're all only as good as the worst school in the city of Milwaukee. You know, if a kid is doing poor at our school, they got to go to someone else's high school and they're going to be doing poor there. So I think everyone can exist, no different than you go and you see a McDonald's and a Burger King across the corner from each other. Like, they can work. Why can't schools work? The biggest struggle is that we're losing parents left and right in Milwaukee. So now you have, you know, you still have the same 100 schools. Yeah, you know, you have the same 100 schools, but now you have less kids because parents have left. And I think it's such a deep problem that, you know, we need more funding in Milwaukee to help fix Milwaukee public schools. Why? Because then now you can attract larger companies and their employees that are coming here like, hey, I want my kids in those schools. That's how you get more tax dollars. But until you fix the schools, you're not going to have people that want to do here. So it's like, which one do you fix first? But like, they both are problems that need to be solved. You know, I don't like closing MPS is not going to solve the problem. Like, we need to find ways to fix MPS, to give them support, to be able to give them more money, look at their systems, and really dig deep into the neighborhood problems, because that's where a lot of these things are starting. It's like, how can we fix the neighborhoods? Because then that gives kids better chances when they go into schools.
Well, we could probably talk. There's probably a lot of different angles we could go on that, but I'm appreciative to get your viewpoint because I know this is something you work in every day, and I have not even scratched the surface, I think, in the complexity that exists. So thank you for teaching me a little bit about that. All right, we're going to take one more break, and when we come back, another Wisconsin casino. Yay or nay? Think about it. This is As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. Well, welcome back. As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. Are you a gambler, Eddie?
I used to be a gambler. I used to love to play poker a lot. But then when I started working harder for my money, it was a lot harder to part with it and give it to a casino.
That's how I feel. I've never been into gambling because I just feel like I also don't bet very often. Like if I ever say, fine, I'll bet you $5, you better believe that I absolutely know I'm going to win that bet, because just casually taking the risk is not my thing. And I don't think I understand blackjack or poker enough to know that I like my odds. And so I've never been big into casinos, but I know, you go to Pato, there's always a lot of people there. Certainly when you go up, what's the one near Green Bay?
Is that Ho Chunk up there?
Is it Ho Chunk?
I believe. Or is Ho Chunk
I just know
Dells?
that when we went up to one of the Packer games, we stayed at the hotel that's connected to, is it Oneida? I don't know.
Maybe.
But and we walked to the casino, and it's just,
towards the Dells.
There's just something about a casino where you walk in and it's the oxygen and the lights, and they're like, what time of day is it? And the flashing machines and everything that, plenty of people are very into it. But now it sounds like potentially a resurgence of having an effort to get a new casino in Kenosha. So the Menominee Indian tribe said Wednesday it's relaunching an effort to do that in partnership with Hard Rock International. When's the last time you ate at a Hard Rock?
We took our kids there to DC last time.
Yeah? There's those like Planet Hollywood gone. Hard Rock still around.
Hard Rock Cafe. We took them to DC and our kids loved it because they like perform and do. It's just it's a different dining experience. But that's the only time I've been to Hard Rock.
I feel like that was such a 90s thing. These theme restaurants, like the Rainforest Cafe, and how those were in all the different malls. And then there was the Hard Rock Cafes and the Planet Hollywoods. What other major themed restaurants? There was one in New York called that might still be open, but Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that was all spooky themed like that. I feel like there's been less themed restaurants that are in vogue than it was when we were growing up.
They do not work in Milwaukee.
Have they ever worked in Milwaukee?
I don't think so. Milwaukee is a very unique market when it comes to that. Like, we don't need all the flair. Like, just give us a good burger, give us some good wings and some good beer, and we're happy. Like, I don't need people swinging from the ceilings or dancing around the tables. Like, people in Milwaukee they just want good food and good drinks
cheaply,
and they're and at a good price, and they're happy. Like, don't give me all the pizzazz because you're going to charge me. Now my burger's that's $12 is $20 because you got someone singing over there.
I don't need it. But what do you think? Another casino? I mean, I guess if you don't spend that much time in casinos anymore, maybe it doesn't affect you. But do we need good, bad? Sometimes it's the same thing. We had a conversation 2 weeks ago about adding another golf course, Kohler adding another golf course, and this trade-off between it being good for communities, economic boosts for communities. I don't really know why this would be a no-go. Like, probably if there's a market for it and people will come, especially if we can get people from Chicago to come up. Because I don't know is there many casinos in Illinois or in and around Chicago?
None that I can really think of. I mean, I like casinos for the fact that it can bring jobs, and usually think people will build around casinos. My struggle with casinos is that it tends to be you're selling dreams more often than not to people that don't have a lot, because they're in there like, how can I get a lot? The easiest way is to put money in a slot and hope to hit $1 million, and they usually end up broke. So that is my one struggle with casinos. It's like it usually hurts the people that need the help the most, but it does create jobs. So it's like finding that balance.
Which is also hard because since, like many states, the only people who can open casinos are Native American people who are also trying to pay and, who've been significantly disadvantaged because of how they've been set up in this country. Because I think in the article that I found about this, one of the motivating efforts, and who knows, maybe that's because they want to get this approved. But what they reference is we're trying to find a way to make, generate more revenue because we have an aging population and paying for schools and stuff for our kids. Because this is the number one way that Indigenous people still living on reservations have been able to generate money for their community and for their tribe. But I agree with you as far as it's kind of sometimes a sad picture when you look at some of, like, I know the amount of elderly people who just sit there all day for something to do and just filling the slot machines and maybe not keeping track of how much they're actually putting into it, because the house doesn't really lose.
So the casinos aren't there because they're losing. And they don't stay there because they're losing.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I thought it was just interesting as far as more stuff I feel like is popping up in Kenosha in general, just because it is such a midway point between Milwaukee and Chicago. And I think with property taxes and taxes in general, like, it's a little bit easier to, or property prices, I should say. I think if you can make the trip to live in Wisconsin and live in Kenosha and then commute to Chicago, I think there's more and more people who are doing that. So it'll be interesting to see as they pop up with more businesses if this becomes a more viable project. But it sounds like you or I will not be there anytime soon.
Probably not. But if we can get, some Chicago Cubs fans to come up and lose a few dollars,
we're always a fan of that. We're always a fan of taking Chicago's money when possible.
That's the exception to my rules.
That's fair. All right. Well, in the last couple minutes that we have, where can people find you? What do you want to plug? What do you want people to know? Where do you want people to follow you?
They can find me on Instagram or on Facebook, I believe. My page is still up, and it's just Edward DeShazer, my full name. I don't think there's any other Edward DeShazers in the world. Is that
it? Do you ever Google yourself to see if anyone else pops up?
I have not.
You've never Googled yourself?
I have not. I used to when I played football because I would want to find articles about myself. But then, I had an incident happen and didn't want to Google myself anymore, so I stay off the internet.
Just in general.
Yeah, so...
I Googled you, and I would say everything that pops up on the first page is, I think it was your minority, the Biz Journal's recognition of you being one of the top minority business leaders. This was a couple years ago. I think some of your social media pops up, because I was looking for your bio because you never sent me your bio.
Sorry.
So I just had to come up with it. Yeah, so you're good. I Google myself probably. Before it used to be a Kristin Brey McKnight. This was a couple years ago, and that I'm sure it's Kristin Brey McKnight and how she pronounces it. I think she was like a country singer at one point, but now I've cornered the market on Kristin Brey's for the first couple of pages.
But see, there's not a ton of DeShazers, so I don't think there's much else out there besides me. So
there you go.
Yeah, they can find me there, and my business website is teachersed.org, and that's where I do a lot of my speaking and connecting with teachers. So if there's any teachers listening, any school leaders that need some sort of support, like, I'm not here to make a dollar. I'm happy to help and create whatever impact I can.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with me today. This was super fun. We'll be back tomorrow. As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey.